Right, welcome everyone. I can see we have our attendees signing in. We'll wait just a few more seconds as folks get their audio connected. Great. Oh, so good to see everyone joining in today. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, a legacy worth building on. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of the program. We'll be taking a look at what the program has accomplished and where the program will be going from here. My name is Randy Butler. I am a program manager of the CADFP at the Institute of International Education, and I'm joined today by our advisory council, as well as our consultancy, Saharan Business Frontiers, and they will be introducing themselves later on in this presentation. But I'd just like to welcome everyone to the presentation. This is being recorded, and the recording will be shared out with the entire alumni community following today's presentation. If you have questions for the question and answer portion, which we will have plenty of time for that following the initial presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A box. I will be fielding questions later on, so you'll be able to direct your questions to the advisory council members or to our colleagues with Saharan Business Frontiers. You don't have the ability to unmute and speak, so please type those questions in. Next, I would like to introduce one of our advisory council members, Dr. Jabril Fall. He is the founding and interim director of Adept, and he is the co-founder and director of GK Partners, a UK-based company that specializes in socially responsible business models, social enterprise, development finance, and implementation. He serves as the chair of Afford and is a visiting professor in practice at the London School of Economics and vice chair of Bond, the platform of UK NGOs working on international development. He is also the founder of Remit Aid and a senior associate of the Foreign Policy Center since 2007. As a business advisor, management consultant, and development executive for 25 years, Jabril has directly supported thousands of small and medium social enterprises in Europe and Africa. And since 1998, Jabril has received ministerial appointments for various public functions in the UK. And in recognition for his services to international development, he was appointed OBE in the 2014 Queen's Birthday Honors List, having been nominated by DFID. So we're very pleased to have him here with us today and so fortunate to have him on the advisory council as well for this program. I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Jabril Fall now.
Thank you very much, Randy, and good morning to most of you who I think are in North America. I'm calling in from a sunny afternoon in South London. Thanks for the introduction, Randy. I have retired from many of the organizations that you've mentioned, but for the purposes of today, we're having the conversation, this consultative engagement on the future of the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program. So friends and colleagues, kindly permit me to take a few minutes just to introduce the discussion and to put a little bit of context on it. In the conversation, we do have our partners at IIE. Of course, we have Randy, Mary, and Christopher. And we have the advisory council of the Carnegie program. We are pleased that some of the advisory council members are with us here. Not everyone. Myself and Professor Patricia Daly have been advisory council members for nearly a decade and have been involved with the program since its inception. We also have on the advisory council two people who have served as hosts at African universities. That's Vice Chancellor Thandi Mwebe who is the Vice Chancellor of Walter Sisulu University. Professor Patricia Daly, of course, it's at the Oxford University. And the other university. The other members are like you, alumni who've been fellows and have undertaken several roles. That includes Professor Philomena Okeke Ike Ihejirika. We also have Professor Kefa Otiso and Dr. Beryl Greywood, who is also a medical practitioner. So that's the advisory council who's in the discussion. We also have consultants from the Saharan Business Frontiers, led by Dr. D. Mona, and I think his colleague Cedric Kwemi is also with us. And we have you, alumni, researchers, scholars who have been on more, some of you on more than one mission. Now, as we discuss the future and the legacy of the program and the future of it, I just wanted to refresh our minds on where we are at the journey. This specialist form of diaspora volunteering, which is the Diaspora Fellowship Program, it's specialist in that it focuses on scholars at universities, but it belongs to the group of diaspora volunteering. The modern iteration of this is older than what many people think. One can date it back to 1973 with the United Nations Development Program setting up what they call TOC 10. And TOC 10 was transfer of knowledge through expatriate nationals. And this was an experiment on this Turkish professionals who were in Germany, who, having been invited as guest workers post-war, over a period of 2 decades, have developed extensive skills and technical and professional know-how. And UNDP, as the development arm of the United Nations, thought that there was something to be gained by harnessing and leveraging that knowledge. Then there was a big gap in terms of action until the African diaspora in particular really coordinated, lobbied, developed ideas on different forms of diaspora volunteering, which ultimately led to the specialist program on scholars in particular. And many of you know this story, but with the funding from Carnegie, it was always known that there is a sunset date. A day will come when the program as it was will have to change. There has been no surprises on that. And as advisory council and as partners with Carnegie and IIE, we've been thinking about it for several years. Now is the time that reality is upon us, and we've started that journey. Apart from our own internal thinking and consultations, we put out a call some months ago to get technical consultants to come assist us map out this journey. And we are pleased, therefore, to say to you that we've received presentations from our consultants. We've worked with them. We've deliberated on this matter. And today we would have the good fortune to hear what they present, their ideas, which is a summary of the decisions and the thinking that we've got as an advisory council with input from all of us. We would like to hear your observations, your questions, and your comments, and that would help us refine sort of the planning on this route. And immediately after we hear from Dr. D. Mona, one of our colleagues, Professor Kefa, will give his feedback and his reflections, and then we would have the discussions led by comments, questions, and observations from yourselves. So that's the program for the day. And now we have about 80 minutes or so for this engagement. Now I hand over to our colleague, Dr. D. Mona from the Saharan Business Frontiers, who talk us through the presentation based on the work we've been undertaking the past few months. D, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jibril, for the kind introduction and detailed introduction as well about the program and where we have come from. Just full disclaimer, the advisory council had been working really, really, really hard behind the scenes. They had lots and lots of information, and they have had many, many deliberations. So this presentation is just a synthesis of the ideas and the thinking of the advisory council. So we just came in to bring all of those ideas together and to see how we move forward with it. So this is a high level presentation. We are not going to go into the details of how decisions were made, so on and so forth. Maybe if time permits and you want to know more during the question and answer period, the advisory council can tell you more about the deliberations that went into. But I can tell you this has been a lot of hard work behind the scenes. And we are also fortunate to have an advisory council that is so committed, way beyond, in fact, what they are even their normal jobs will pay them for, right? Here, they are not even getting paid, and yet they are so committed to making sure that this goes beyond what it was initially meant to be. That goes to the idea of volunteerism, right? It is not something that they are getting money for. It is something that they believe that once it's done right, the impact will be great. So today, just by way of summary of what we are going to cover, we'll quickly go through the record, the challenges and opportunities of the Cardiff program, what the road is ahead of us, what the Accra convocation is going to do, opportunities beyond Accra, and how we build the future together, right? So what we build together, I think it is no secret to all of us, through the Carnegie supported program. We and the I run program, for instance, we have been able to administer over 750 fellowships that went to 201 African host universities within 10 African countries. And they came from over 293 sending institutions in North America. And this has happened over a 12-year period. So if you were to go into economics, this is like the autonomous injection, right? So this is just what has gone in. But what it has led to has multiples of effects, right? The multiplier effect comes in. So no one fellow went to their host institution and came back with just the partnership that they started with. So they actually developed more partnerships either within the host institution or beyond. So this initial injection is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the impact of the Cardiff program, and you can all speak to it. But if you are part of our WhatsApp platform, when you see the posts from people, the engagements that people are doing, it will tell you this is just a tip of the impact of the program. So in terms of outcomes, again, another just tip of the iceberg, but we have over 700 curriculum designed or redesigned, over 4,000 graduate students that have been mentored, over 300 research projects that are being completed and some ongoing. And just reporting, 54 people reporting alone, we have over $4.9 million in grants that have been obtained as a result or catalyzed by the Cardiff program, right? So if out of 750, if only 54 reported that, you can just imagine what the multiplier effect is, and if all of us were to report. And I think the biggest thing that is going for this new, for Cardiff, is actually not in what it has done, it is in the desire to stay connected. These are numbers that both the Fulbright program, Fulbright specialist program, will be envious of. And Jibril, you had mentioned the volunteerism. Most people, I don't know about any fellow that said, I'm going on a Cardiff fellowship because it is going to make me economically better. They all went back because they wanted to give back. They wanted to reconnect with their home institutions, with the continent, and to share in the knowledge dissemination process, right? So you can see that long after the fellowship has ended, people are still staying engaged, and it is bilateral. So the fellows are staying engaged with their hosts, and the hosts are staying engaged with their fellows. Despite not so strong economic reasons, you can still see that the experience has been very, very high, 4.5 out of 5, rating the experience just engaging. Again, it goes way beyond the economics, but more in terms of intrinsic value, people wanting to give back where they are from. Okay. These challenges, these successes did not come without some challenges, right? So these were great achievements, but the advisory council surfaced, along with IIE, in the administration of this, some challenges that they have observed, and of course, some challenges that alumni of the program have been able to report back through the surveys that were administered. So the first two, one has to do with institutional home to continue your work. So most of us will go on these fellowships for one project, but the entrepreneurs that are in us, we find other opportunities to actually give back or to engage. Problem usually is that when you find those opportunities, you don't have a home to help you harness them. If you bring them back to your home institution, it's like knocking on the brick wall, then open the doors to make them stay engaged. And the host institution may not also have the capacity. So there is this missing link of when you go and explore even more opportunities, is there a body that can help you harness them and make an impact beyond what you were initially supposed to do? Then we have the second challenge of the fellowships look like they are static, right? Once you finish your fellowship, well, every other thing is just between you and your host. You are waiting for the next call to come before you can start engaging. And of course, these calls were limited to 2. So you had 2 chances of engaging in your collaboration. So such long wait periods may, of course, a lot of things come in between and dampen that relationship that you had already built. And so these were the first 2 challenges that the advisory council surfaced. The second 2 are about gender representation. So we have about 68% of the fellowships going to men and 32% going to women. And it's not that the men are not going to take care of women, but the issue is even just the sheer fact of seeing a woman show up can be an inspiration. So how do we build fairness so such that there's a fair representation of women in this? And the advisory council has already identified some of the challenges and ways to address them. The fourth one is has to deal with the structural challenges. It was a single funder dependent model, right? So when Carnegie said, okay, this is the year, like like Gabriel said, we knew from the beginning that it was going to end. But would somebody come and take over another person's program and block like that? So when Carnegie decided that, okay, this was going to be the last end, then it meant the end of the program as well, right? Then of course, it also focused only on the academic fellow. We were not focusing on the host institutions. In other words, what are the things that they needed to be able to facilitate effective implementation? Of course, it did not focus on professionals beyond those in the academia. So these were some of the challenges. And we also said that there was a geographic limit to only 10 countries in Africa when we could have so much more impact across the continent. So, like I said, the Carnegie funding is coming to an end, and we've had 12 years of success, 12 years of challenges that have been surfaced, which can turn into opportunities. And the question is, do you just write this out and close the program as a history note, or you use that to build something? The advisory council chose to build based on that success and challenges that have been surfaced as a result of running the Carnegie program. So the advisory council decided to form a new institution agency called African Diaspora Fellowship initiatives. A lot of deliberation going into this. Every single word in this name was chosen purposefully. The initiatives, the fellowships, everything was chosen purposefully. We can go into the details of how that came, but this is the logo of that new agency. So what will that new agency be responsible for? One, the mission will be to facilitate enduring partnerships between African universities, institutions, diaspora scholars, and professionals through fellowships and targeted programs. So at the core of this new agency are still fellowships, right? But we are expanding it to professionals and making sure that it's not just giving, but an enduring partnership so that it is a bilateral way so that it can become sustainable. And the vision will be a future in which African universities and institutions flourish through enduring partnerships to advance knowledge, innovation, and development, right? The first decision point the advisory council had to make was whether to make it a program or an institution. And there's a difference here. So the program will run inside the host institution. And of course, there are all these exigencies. If the host says, I'm not going to run it again, then you are done, so on and so forth. And when the funding cycle ends for that program, you have to rethink how to continue it. But with an institution, it's like a living entity on its own, which can host several programs. So we can have multiple programs, like multiple Carnegie kind of programs, targeted at different areas of interest. The Advisory Council did deep deliberations about this, the thematic areas and the kind of engagements that we'll do, different sustainability models. A lot of them will come up later. I think that will come up in Accra convocation. But all of those have been done, and it's more like developing them and hopefully testing them before we get to Accra for you to get the details of those things, but a lot. So the Advisory Council decided that it will be an institution that will help address some of the structural challenges, that will help address each of the at least each of the 3 challenges in terms of no institutional home, and then also fellowships happening long and in between fellowship periods, right? So what does this mean for us? One, for us all alumni, we have a permanent home that we, with our home institutions or without, can connect with to make the impact that we started, all right? So you have a home to work with. It will still continue the fellowship mission, and all of us, and I insist, are going to be founding members of this new institution. So it is a collective thing that and there's a reason for that, right? That shows that we are all committed to doing this. Again, when you go back to the numbers, the engagement tells you that people are in this for the difference that they will make back home, not necessarily for the benefit that they will gain themselves, right? So we have that going for us right here. Another thing that the advisory, I think the overall challenge of building a new agency, it has to do with resources. The funding period has come to an end, and you don't want to have a period where fellowships or the program goes dormant. That will make people drift. That enthusiasm, that momentum that we already had will diminish with time if there's no activity going on. But the challenge is that you are building a new entity with very limited resources, if any at all, and you still have to run programs. How do you balance that? One, in terms of effort, and 2, with the resources. All of these are constraints that the Advisory Council is using in its design thinking processes as to the sustainability and continuity of the new entity. So in Accra, what we are going to do is, like we have demonstrated a lot of success over the years. So let's get together and let's celebrate, right? And we launch a new entity to take that success forward and build the future together. So what we can expect in Accra will be alumni-led workshops on projects or sustainability and impact, alumni voices on how the fellowship has helped launch or progress their career trajectories. We have opportunities to engage with partners and funder organizations, especially about some of the programs and initiatives that the new entity will be proposing. Of course, not everybody will be given the strict time period. Not everybody can run a workshop, right? So we'll have poster sessions to showcase some of the projects that have been catalyzed by the Cardiff, just to show the impact of it. We'll have the formal introduction of the new organization, and we have community conversations on how alumni contribute to the advancement of the new organization going forward. Beyond the convocation, that is just the beginning, right? Now we are launching forward. So that's the beginning of building something robust, sustainable, and longer lasting. And so one of the things we are hoping to do to make the organization as independent and sustainable as possible is to be able to endow it. So whilst the advisory council has talked about many different ways of getting activity going on, continuity, we still need that endowment to be able to run independent programs. Remember, if you are going, you can write a proposal to a funder, and they will decide whether it aligns with what they want, and will give you funding and restrict it to what they want. But if and that is good in itself. At least we'll make sure that it also aligns. So there should be that bilateral alignment. But when you also have some seed money to at least help with, take the Carnegie, for instance, it says take fellows to Africa to make a difference. But when fellows go to Africa and realize that, wow, there are these other opportunities that we can leverage, and they don't have a home to support that, then it just goes down, right? So having an organization that has some independent resources of its own can help bridge those gaps. So we want to launch this and to ask anybody to give you money for an endowment. They want to see whether you yourself believe in what you are doing. Do you have skin in the game? So one of the things that we want to start with, that was what the advisory council proposed. We have 750 alumni. If each of us, individually or through our network, can generate a tax-deductible $750, we will have at least a seed funding of $562,000 that we can now put before other organizations to say, these are people who are really committed. So the numbers and the amount will be our trump card right here, if I used Trump selectively. But that becomes the card that we can use to tell people that people are really committed to this, they have skin in the game, and they want to see this grow. So your buy-in is very important for this. So from now until Accra, the formation work will advance between now and October. Accra will celebrate, and beyond, we'll go into the deeper works of launching the new organization and the funding program for it. But I think this is about all that we have. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I think the Advisory Council is here to answer. If you have an idea that you would like to share, we are still in the development phase of it. The Advisory Council is very eager to receive more and more contributions and ideas from you. So you can email us at africandiaspora@iee.org. We'll have some, as we develop this, we'll have some working groups coming up. The website will come up, working groups will come up. You can self-select and join working groups for us to help build this new organization. Again, we are all founding partners. And if you have a university or a partner or a funder that you would like to introduce that can potentially support the direction of this new agency, again, you can email africandiaspora@iee.org. Gabriel, I think this is the end, and I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee. It is now 31 minutes after the hour. So we have 59 minutes now for an engagement in terms of your questions, comments, and observations. Dee, you reminded us that the Advisory Council did ask a question. That is, does 12 years of investment endure or become history? I think we're taking both. We're taking the history, and based on that, we endure. That's the definitive answer. And thanks for giving a good summary of the discussions we've been having over the past few months. Before we collect the other questions, can I just invite Professor Kefa Otiso to give a member of the Advisory Council and also alumni to give his reflections and any observations he wants to draw attention to. Kefa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jibril. And thank you, Dee, for that engaging presentation. And thanks, colleagues, for attending the webinar. I see all 60 of you, but obviously, chances are there are more. What I'm seeing may not be the full tally of everybody who is attending. And of course, also thank you to IIE for continuing to support this work from the beginning. Many of you might not know that actually the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program was born out of a meeting between Professor Paul Selesa and Dr. Tade Aina in Nairobi. At the time, Tade was working for Carnegie, and Professor Selesa was basically looking at the global African diaspora, and actually that is where the idea originated. Then Tade was able to provide some funding through Carnegie, and eventually a proposal was written, and eventually Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program was born as an idea, and basically as a demonstration project, whether in fact professionals like ourselves can contribute to Africa's development in a structured manner. So you do know that the need for the African diaspora to be organized has never been greater. I've indicated previously that whenever you hear of China's development and whatnot, those of us who teach this material, we do know that actually much of that was significantly done by the Chinese diaspora, especially in Southeast Asia, and eventually going on to other parts of the globe. It is not that Africa cannot develop without us, but rather the issue is that the African diaspora and Africans at home need to network, need to partner more effectively, and be able to actually work to move the continent forward. I've said previously that perhaps what the continent has never had is a middle class and the cadres of professionals like ourselves in sufficient quantities to be able to actually move the continent forward. There is nowhere you can look nowadays, whether it's finance, whether it's academia, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in business, where you don't see a significant presence of the African diaspora. People who actually can get the work done. So it's an opportune moment for us to step up and actually be able to work with our colleagues at home to be able to move the continent forward. As Dee mentioned, and as you are all aware, the initiative initially focused on academics, but you and I know that actually in order for the continent to move forward, it's going to need more than just those of us in academia. We need other professionals, which is why we are thinking of a new entity focused on professionals writ large, not just in academia. But the idea has been demonstrated, and the idea has been proven, and also, as Dee mentioned, remember that the name of the initial program, Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship, is because Carnegie was the funding agency. We cannot possibly expect to get more funding from other entities when you have that kind of name. You have to change. And thankfully, Carnegie itself is more than happy to be one of the continuing funding agencies in the future, obviously, but we need to broaden it. And also, as we mentioned, our deliberations are that we ourselves need to have skin in the game. This should not surprise us. You guys already know that we contribute billions and billions of dollars through our remittances to the African continent every year. In many countries, we constitute about 4.4%, 5% of GDP. In my own country, Kenya, I've actually had a chance to engage with policymakers, and I've always told them, why don't you take a portion of these diaspora remittances and invest them in institutions that actually can enable the diaspora to be more engaged and more effectively mobilized for the purpose of national and continental development. So I think these are some of the discussions the new entity allows us to engage in, and in the process be able to move the continent forward. Finally, you do know that sometimes when we show up on the continent, especially those of us who are outside, our reception in the home environment is not necessarily always positive. You know, there are power struggles, among other things that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. And this is where we need some of this funding from here and entities that we control to facilitate some of the things that actually we want to be able to do on the African continent for the purpose of moving it forward. I don't want to launch into another lecture. Mine was basically a brief reflection and to thank everyone for showing up and also to at least encourage us that, one, we need to be engaged as we have been engaged. And when it comes to fundraising, I know that sometimes people can be like, oh man, that is going to be a big hurdle. But in fact, if you look at the monies that we contribute through other initiatives and even personally, we do actually have an ability to be able to raise the money that we need. And with the seed fund that we are proposing, it actually puts us in a position to be able even to talk to our own national governments to actually invest in these types of entities for the betterment of the continent going forward. So let me stop here and then go back to Jibril so we can transition to the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kefa. And I think Randy have been keeping an eye on any questions that may have, or comments or observations that may have come up. Just before I hand over to Randy, just to say the other advisory council members who are with us, I can see that Beryl is with us. Please bear in mind if you have other observations to make, we'll come back to you. Yeah, Randy, any questions?
Yes, so I just wanted to remind everyone that if you do have questions or comments or observations, please submit those in the question and answer box, and we can read those out and share them with everyone in attendance and the council here. We did have one comment come in that I think touches on what Kepa was just saying related to the fundraising. So this is from Moses Aqua. And he says that the 750 for 750 idea is very good. However, we must consider the fact that some fellows have passed away, they've died, so we would not get technically the 562,000 for initial investment. So he suggests making the $750 donation the minimum, or increase the donation to $1,000 per fellow. So that is his comment and suggestion.
Thank you very much, Moses. Yes, I think you've gotten the spirit of it. 750 by 750. It's one of those sort of neat slogans. But yes, that's the idea, that 750 is the minimum. We would be very, very pleased if it is much more than 750. But also, we are keen not to raise the bar too high because, of course, people struggle with financial problems everywhere. As Dee mentioned, the 750 need not be from our own pockets. It may be from our networks as well. So in my heart, I believe, Moses, we will do more than 750 each. But thanks for that observation and thanks for that positive vibe, as it were. Thanks. Randy, any others?
We do. We have
Beryl,
another.
I think that's
I'll
just
just
saying.
Go ahead.
Yes,
I'll
Kefa,
just say
please,
this
go
quickly.
ahead.
What I wanted to mention also, remember that I agree, Dr. Jibril, that yes, we can actually raise more, but at the same time also remember that the money can be donated over time once the entity is registered. So we're not saying you must come up with 750 or 1,000 immediately, but it's a commitment. And by the way, from a marketing perspective, 750 from 750, that is fairly good to market. It's a good marketing jingle. But yeah, we do recognize that obviously, unfortunately, some members may have passed.
Yeah.
And of course, not everyone will give, but I'm sure everyone will give.
I have another comment here from Simon Mariwa. He agrees with 750 being the minimum. And some people might be able to give more. He has a suggestion here that as part of the fundraising initiative, You should involve the host institutions by writing directly to their presidents or vice chancellors to support the fundraising initiative.
Yes, and I think I'll invite Dee to also comment on this. So the 750 by 750, I think the thinking is this being our initial declaration of not only intention, but commitment. So this is us as a community, we're doing this. And then it makes it easy to open up discussions with every other stakeholder and potential partner. Yes, the host institutions, the sending institutions, and almost everyone else. And if I'm not mistaken, we would be developing a plan, a fundraising plan beyond what we're starting with. Dee, any observations before we go to the next?
No, these are very exciting thoughts coming from the alumni, and they were just to see that the thoughts are synced with the discussions that you had in Oxford is so reassuring and comforting. But yeah, so I think that was Dr. Simon Mariwa. You mentioned getting the host institutions to also support. I mean, at least for the most part, they are one of the biggest beneficiaries of this program, and we were lucky to have some host institution presidents in the meeting there, and they were all on board with that idea of actually supporting that. So there are many different ways to raise it, but this idea of the 750 by 750 is just to say, for now, the alumni are truly engaged, and this is it in their numbers. So you get at least 750 people, even if it's $50 for the first year, and you make the rest. But that number commitment is good. Then we get the amount 750 on average. That is even better than we can showcase to people. So thank you.
Andy?
Yes, we've had some other comments and questions come in. Faith Mina is asking, if you choose to do an institute, where would it be housed? I think
Okay.
she's referring to the institutional housing of the future entity.
Yeah.
Yes, Dee, please go ahead.
Okay. No, I mean, that was another discussion we had, detailed. For now, we are going to continue with our partner, AAU, Association of African Universities. Their headquarters is in Accra, Ghana. They have so kindly and generously accepted to host this new institution. In fact, I was in Ghana recently, so I went by. There is a nice restaurant by their headquarters. So I went by, walked around there, and very beautiful building. So that's where we'll be hosted. And again, the idea is for all of Africa, and this institution will be a good representation of that.
Yes, and as a new institution, ADFI would also be registered in the United States for the purposes of harnessing and leveraging the diaspora contribution, the tax breaks. And for that, the work has also started for us to register as a Section 501c institution, most likely in Washington, D.C. And we are also pleased to say, again, African institutions are already coming along, giving support. You have the African AAU in Ghana, but Trust Africa, which is an endowed institution, are also on board and are supporting us. They have facilitated for us to have at least a correspondence address in Washington for the purposes of completing the registration. Thank you.
So I think, in other words, then there will be two offices. There will be a US one and an Africa one. So, to kind of respond to the question as well. And eventually, of course, the plan, Faith, is to see whether we can also end up having something in Europe, because remember, the point is to try and see how we can mobilize the global African diaspora wherever we can find it in large numbers.
Right. Yes. Zachary Senwo has asked about the consideration of doing conferences within the continent for fundraising. Is that something that's been considered?
Yes, I think there has also been informal discussions with some of the African networks on philanthropy. In Africa, there are two main networks, APF and APN, that are organized, structured, and there's been informal engagement. They already have an active diary of activities around the calendar year. And as soon as we pick up, yes, Simon, we would connect with them. And effectively, instead of starting from scratch on many things, we would want to piggyback on the partnerships. Because if you look at the vision and mission, that vision that we have, we share it with very many good organizations. And that means there's the basis for strategic partnerships.
Yep.
Perhaps at this point, it's also worth repeating a point that at every stage of this journey, Carnegie, what used to be Carnegie Corporation of New York, they've now rebranded to the Andrew Carnegie Foundation. We are letting them know, and they are with us in this journey because, of course, their investment have been important, so we would be leveraging that. Any other observation on this before we move on to the next comments?
Let me add something also. I think you can already see that also this is part of the thinking behind having the convocation in Accra, rather than having. Remember, the last one we had was in Washington, D.C., but we opted for Accra for many reasons. Many of you are alive to the geopolitical developments across the globe. Africans are increasingly facing restricted visa regimes. So if you were to hold it in Washington, D.C., for example, right now, there are many, many people from the host universities in Africa that will not be able to travel for various reasons. And also, if you're going to be an Africa-serving entity, we do want to have a presence on the continent and be able to move around freely as the African continent itself opens up. So yes, in short, there will be many, many opportunities to do things in Africa, logistically, and also being on the ground when you're doing some of these things. It makes a big difference. It may be that some things will be rotated between North America, Europe, and Africa, but the point is still the same, that there will be significant presence and meetings in Africa.
And yeah, Zach, just to add to these discussions. So in October, when the meeting was held, I remember the advisory council had a deep deliberation about conferences in Africa for fundraising purposes, connections, so on and so forth as well. Given the challenges now starting, so the idea was, let's piggyback on the institutions, as Jibril has mentioned, that are already doing this. If we can get the impact, we will. But later on, if it becomes necessary, we can have our own independent ones. But for now, I think we will be well served just going with the institutions that are already running conferences in the continent.
I have a comment here. It's a comment and question from Patrick Menza. He's very excited about the ADFI, fully supports it. He already wants to participate and is asking about how funds can be transferred to the ADFI. So I know that's not something that he can, log onto his bank account today and send some money, but we will be sharing once that bank account is set up, all the registrations complete, we will be sharing that out with the entire alumni community. We'll have a donation button that you can click and send your funds. But I love to see that enthusiasm. D, great presentation. You're already motivating Patrick to send some money to the initiative. So I want to encourage, we still have some time. So if you're sitting there wondering about the ADFI, the future of what's happening here, anything that's been said so far by our council members, please go ahead and type your questions and we're here to answer them. I'll read another comment here from Valentine Ucho Agwu. It will be good to keep host scholars abreast when dealing with the host institutions. The scholars are more likely to engage the vice chancellors and prompt them into committing to the project.
Yes, and I think you partly referred to something that's linked to this point, in that with the fellowship program, there was a lot of focus on the fellow, not
Mhm.
the host and the um, on the ground, as it were. I suppose you can perhaps comment a bit more on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So based on the discussions and the resources we reviewed, the focus of the Cardiff was getting supporting fellows from here to go and do the work. So all the resources were given to the fellow, and the host institution had to, whether they had to make some adjustments. I mean, the advisory council and they were very cognizant of the fact that most institutions cannot support fully, but they also needed to show some skin in the game. What wasn't clear was, even though the institution may provide some accommodation and transportation, the host partner, that is the host fellow, may also need resources to actually stay engaged with that diasporan fellow. And there were no resources for that. Their home institutions did not give them anything. So most of them were like, this is costing me more in terms of time and resources and not much. So the idea of involving the host institution partnership is to also assess the needs of the host fellows, what and how we could either get the host institution to support them or get the new entity to support both, so that the collaboration can be more effective. I think that was a discussion, but unless I'm missing something there, Jibril.
No, I think that covers it quite well. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe the only thing to add is this idea of ATFI now being a permanent home means that the discussion is ongoing as to what are the new products, what are the new services, the levels of engagement that would be needed. And it would be negotiated and implemented in time. The difference being now there's a sort of permanent home, or there will be a permanent home, as it were. Okay. Any others, Randy?
Yes, I have an observation that came in from Peter Nyasulu. And this is what I'm about to read from him is something that I know you all have been discussing and considering the strategy for. He says, looking ahead, when we secure funding for the ADFI, he encourages us to think more broadly about brain circulation within Africa rather than focusing primarily on Africans in the Western diaspora. He believes that anyone working outside their country of origin can be considered part of the diaspora and may face various challenges that create a need for further academic or professional development.
Yeah, I think that's a very important and interesting point. And we have seen flashes of that happen over time in Africa. In the late 90s, for example, in South Africa, there was an opening inviting many scholars from other African countries. That happened at the time. We also saw that in Rwanda. Now, the issue of the African Union as the continental body, as you know, in 2005, gave a working definition of what the African diaspora is. And it likes the idea of thinking continent-wide. So there's two dimensions of it. So it's the continent-wide, Africa-wide thinking is, if you are within Africa, you are not diaspora. You are not African diaspora. You may be Cameroonian diaspora in Nigeria. So in that case, the diaspora happens at that level. So there, again, having ADFI means one can develop programs with individual countries to assist, because as we speak now, there are countries that have their own diaspora fellowship program. I myself run one in Gambia. I'm from the Gambia, and we have a diaspora fellowship program. We have, in the past 4 or 5 years, we have 65 people on it right now as we speak. There's something happening. It's specifically for the Gambian diaspora. And yes, some of the fellows are from African countries. right now. But on a continent-wide, the AU encourages us, and I think it's a good idea because in all of this Pan-African idea is a strong one to look at Africa-wide views. That is those of us outside. And as we've seen in the 750 alumni, many of you had returned to Africa and did not go to your home country. You've gone to another African country. So that's a very powerful element. But yes, the mix allows for that diversity at a continent-wide and individual country level as well. Thanks very much. Where was that coming from? That was from whom?
From Peter.
That was from Peter. Yeah.
Oh, Peter. Yeah. Thank you so much for that observation.
And
Anything
Peter,
else to add?
Yeah. No. One quick note, Peter. So it's not ADFP, but ADFI, ADFI. So that's just a new. We have put the program aside and now put it as initiatives because there will be many different initiatives under it. So
I agree with you, Dee, that last word, initiatives. Remember, we debated it for a considerable period of time.
Yeah.
And the reason, Peter, was also that there are some things and ideas that can come from members that actually can be accommodated under that initiatives. And certainly the one you're raising is an issue that can exercise us a little bit more in the future. And then perhaps think of how to think of this situation where, for example, an African academic is working in another African country, and what sorts of programs and accommodations can we make for those types of people?
Andy?
Yeah, I have a question here that's been submitted from Margaret Kaitza. She asks, could we collaborate with the Association of Historically Black Colleges and Universities in the United States who are interested in connecting with African HEIs?
Thank you so much, Margaret, for that. In the work we've been doing so far, we've actually identified already a list of strategic partners. Yeah. And these strategic partners are the ones that we share the same vision, no difficulties, no problems at all. And further than that, there has been informal discussions and expressions of interest. So yes, HBCUs, absolutely, without doubt. Now, there's a bit of sequencing of the actual work being done. So the level of engagement that you would expect hasn't happened yet because we think it's important to sort out the foundations. Now we've had this consultative engagement with the alumni. I'm pretty sure in the coming weeks and months, we would also have engagement with the strategic partners, and then that would move to more practical and more tangible collaborations. But without doubt, there would be an important part. And just as an aside, I mentioned that the structured nature of diaspora volunteering in the contemporary era, which you date back UNDP and others, but if you take diaspora contribution and volunteering in Africa, it's an old one. And the historically Black colleges and universities had a big role to it. Of course, William Du Bois and all that movement on Pan-Africanism with scholars from the HBCUs and their contributions to the Pan-Africanist movement and the development of the modern African state already speaks for itself. And I think the point that Dee raised about enduring and history, the good part of it, we will not leave it. We will take it as inspiration and for lessons as well. And the good parts of our story, which we often forget, I think the institution would make sure that it puts great emphasis on it, if not for anything, that we do not forget, and that it reminds us on how to improve the relationships for now and the future. Thank you. Anything else to add on that?
Yeah, just something quick, Gabriel. Margaret, so when in Oxford, in the meeting and the discussions, I think you even discussed specific programs that will bring senior administrators from these institutions to connect with the others. So the details of those programs will be coming. But I just want to reassure you that that was one of the things that was deliberately discussed. And there were program ideas to actually move that from just discussion to implementation and action right there. So good point. And again, exciting just to see how your thought process is. So that tells us, at least from the outside, that the advisory council has been very in sync with the alumni community, the fellows, in terms of thoughts and what the needs are. Thank you.
I think if
Randy?
I can add briefly, you do know, Margaret, Margaret, you also are aware that we have a lot of homecoming initiatives or return home initiatives across the U.S. in particular right now. And some of those are closely connected with the HBCUs. And there's an element there that actually can be tapped as well. And not to mention also that when the fundraising period commences officially, these are also some of the places that actually can help us to make inroads into people who can potentially make a contribution. I'm sure you know that, for example, when Africa was becoming independent, many countries in the 50s and 60s, the African American community, at least in the US, played a big role. The Kenyan Constitution was partly drafted by an African American, and there are many. You know, there were people who were brought from Africa. For example, the Mboya Kennedy Airlift from East Africa to create a labor force that will run the newly independent African countries. That actually involved a lot of African Americans in the United States. So definitely there are many layers of what that kind of partnership can look like. And obviously, as we said, there was an email at the end, which actually will also flash at the end. If you have any specific ideas, I don't think it's too early for you to start sending them. Because sometimes a question here, behind the question, there is usually layers and layers of information we may not be aware of. You'll be welcome to send those and also outline some of the ideas you have in mind, even as we continue working forward in this area.
Right. I have another question here from Faith Mina, and I know that this was touched on earlier, but I think she's wondering if there's more detail to be shared at this point of the design and structure of the entity. What mechanisms are built into the design of the ADFI to ensure equitable participation and access, especially for women?
Yes, I think one have raised without any equivocation about the problem of gender imbalance in this. So that would remain clearly an issue to be addressed at every level. Regarding the structure, the approach is to just use the standard good practices that exist, master that first, and then put stuff on it on any layer. If you take the advisory council now, I think there are 7 people and 5 are women. 4 are women, 3 are men. I think that consideration will remain throughout in terms of, but that won't be enough since we have highlighted the imbalance as an issue, which means that it needs activities, programs, and proactive engagement further than that. And as Kefa was referring, the specific solution or the range of solutions, we would not have all of those answers ourselves, but it's in the discussion to hear about it. The only guidance we have, it needs to be solution focused. So we are great experts on the problems. We know the problem and we agree. We agree the problem. So the challenge we put out there to scholars, to other professionals, is not necessarily another rehearsal of the dimensions of the problem, but assistance and guidance on the solution. And the solution need not be fully worked out, but in trying to do it, we learn through it. So I think that would be our main guidance. Bottom line, we are aware of it. We don't know all the solutions. We expect the alumni and other partners to assist in that. Anything else to add? Kefa or D?
Maybe I can add something. Faith, this issue actually has been exercising us our minds for a while. One of the reasons the numbers look the way they do is when you're asking perhaps a lady with a young family to go on a fellowship in Africa for 3 months, obviously you have to ask yourself, how is the family going to be taken care of? That may very well be one of the reasons, for example, why you see the numbers being what they are. And therefore, one of the things that we have discussed is perhaps sometimes things like virtual fellowships, or even more deliberately speaking to women academics and finding out exactly how does a fellowship that is tailored to meet their needs, how is it going to be structured? And I think that is really going back to what Jibril was saying, that we don't have all the answers right now, but we are very aware of the problem itself. And by the way, there were also, even in the Cardiff, attempts to actually redress the issue, but the way the thing was set up was not easy to simply change it and start making it work more effectively for women academics. So very much something we're aware of, and also something that actually we have discussed. And again, we'll be welcoming your ideas in terms of how it can be structured. And obviously, if you have experiences from the previous one that we need to incorporate in the new one, we'll be more than happy to receive those as well.
Randy?
Yeah. Juliet Chipamuro has asked if at the convocation this November, will there be an opportunity to discuss a global alumni network with ADFI structure that might allow creation of country chapters or regional hubs with an elected alumni leadership structure with a digital database showing who is doing what and where? I'd like to just quickly address that yes, there will be plenty of opportunity to discuss and make plans for such a network. We have open networking sessions. We will have a global cafe as part of the agenda. We'll also have some of the presentation sessions. We'll touch on some of these topics. So this is being considered. I want to see if any of our council members or our SBF attendees also have anything to address related to this topic.
Anything else? I think Beryl has dropped off. When she joined us, she was at the hospital. So I think she may have gone back to duties. But yes, so any comments, Cedric, if you have anything else to add on that?
Not here. I've been using typing response on the chat. So
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that discussion will definitely come up, and it's open. The team is open to the ideas. The first thing is just from a business development perspective, we need to get the main one going well and well structured. Then we'll see how we can build it out. But we had the discussions that it's just because we started in Accra and in Washington, D.C., doesn't mean those are the only two places. May have regional and country offices or country program areas. But until then, we need to make sure that the first one, the mother, is working well. Then we can expand it before we overstretch ourselves.
Yes, and the beauty of the suggestion is that if one is setting up an IT platform for it somehow, then all of these considerations and functionalities can be built in, because then the network can happen on a thematic basis, on a research topic basis, on a country basis, so many dimensions. So thanks for flagging that up. So meaning when we build a sort of platform, it has all of those capabilities in the very beginning. We also believe, and I think we shouldn't underplay this, that is the organic sort of evolution of some of the networks amongst the alumni, for that to allow that to happen. Because also one would not want to burden the alumni too much with many formal structures. So it's to have a facilitative structure and allow a lot of that organic stuff. Of course, when we spot something that's becoming so interesting that it needs to be structured, maybe one picks it up. So that would be my additional comment on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Randy, I noticed we are now 10 minutes past the hour, so we have at most 20 minutes to wrap up and to close. So any other comments and observations?
Yes, thank you for the timekeeping reminder. I see someone has asked if it's possible to recap what has been discussed and agreed upon so far for those who came in late. I know we will have some closing comments, and then also John Ona, who is the one who asked this, I'll just remind those who came in late that this presentation is being recorded and we will share it with the entire alumni community either later today or tomorrow. It takes a bit of time to export the video recording and get it set up to send, but that will be sent out in the next 48 hours to the entire alumni community, the recording. And let's see. There's a question here. If you can just talk a little bit more again about what role the AAU is playing to support in the new initiative. I will say they are our local logistics partner for the convocation this November, and they are playing a role in helping to launch the initiative on the continent.
Randy, I think Eugene's question is about the AU, African Union.
Oh, yes, my brain just inserted the extra A in there. Yes.
Yes. So with the African Union, you would say that their engagement or support would be more strategic rather than operational. So amongst the partners to be invited to be at the convocation would, of course, be a continental organization like the African Union. Informal engagement has already started. Now, several years ago, some of you would remember that the AU came up with what was called CESA, Continental Educational Strategy for Africa, which was a 10-year program that ended, I think, a couple of years ago, and the successor came out. In fact, in the evolution of the Cardiff program, there was a major conference, 2015, if I'm not mistaken, or 16 in Dakar. It was the African Union played a major part with it. Several years later, we also had another strategic conference put together in Addis Ababa, co-hosted by the AU. A late friend, what's his name? A guy from Carleton University, was professor of African literature. He died in the aircraft in the Ethiopian airline crash. Professor Pius was the co-convener of that. So we've kept the AU at that strategic level so that all of the thinking aligns to the big Agenda 2063 and the CESA agenda. But I think in terms of operations and tactical level, that we just partner rather than depend too much on them. So if you ask me what would we ask of them, maybe it would be that formal sort of endorsement and accompaniment. And what would they ask of us? That every success we have, every trip where a member of the alumni takes, every paper they've written, everything that's done is already a tick box for the African Union. So what we're doing is fully aligned to their needs of getting the Africa we want. So that, I think, in the balance, and I think the thinking now is it wouldn't necessarily go beyond that. Of course, there's opportunities for specific partnerships like the conferences or other convocations whereby they're doing something similar and it's in line with what we're doing. So we work together on specific individual projects. But the strategic alliance is the big, big thing. Thank you. Randy, I think, yes. Is Kefa still with us? I know he needs to go in a few minutes. Kefa, if you...
Yeah, he's here.
I'm here.
Yeah. Kefa, if there's any other observation you had, because you may have to leave 10 minutes before they close, then this would be a good time.
No, I don't have any observations, but basically I'm very excited by what I'm hearing in terms of feedback, and very much like some of the ideas, many of the ideas I'm seeing in the chat. This is definitely where we need initiatives like this and even webinars like this to actually tap the collective wisdom of the fellows. Yeah, so even as I drop out, I'm very, very excited by the level of engagement and what I'm seeing.
Great.
Kevin, there are also some questions in the Q&A. If you think any of them applies to you, you can take a quick stab at them.
No,
we don't want you to go free.
Yeah, I think, for example, I see a question by Gantwa Mwakalundwa. Yes, we are still recruiting people. remember, even Cardiff recruited people through the application process, and actually the people who are in the database as experts are more than even the fellowships that were funded. And this is something that we'll continue to do, to recruit more members. And, because remember, the African diaspora is actually quite large. It's way, way, way more than the 750 that have gotten fellowships. So we will be recruiting continuously. And of course, we'll always come back to you for ideas on how to bring in new members. I do see a question by Nixon. Maybe you're talking about some of the...
Can you read out the question? Are those the questions that Randy was reading out?
Okay.
Yeah, Randy, yeah.
You read it out so that we hear the question.
Oh, looks like Randy. Okay, yeah. So, for example, the question that I responded to was from Gantwa Mwakalundwa. Currently, majority of us here are alumni of the program. The strength of the new initiative would be in recruiting and keeping new members. Do we have any plans on the table for that? That is actually the one I just responded to.
Okay.
The other one that I see here, Adebayo Abba, you're asking about a timeline for the ADFI. That was actually addressed in the presentation. When the recording is shared, you'll actually see that there's a timeline in there, all the way to Accra and things of that nature. Then there is a question here, Nixon, maybe. I really like the idea of initiatives, much as we rely on endowment, which is a great and excellent idea from donors and partners. Did we consider the idea of self-sustaining initiatives? The idea is like having a university building a hotel and hosting facilities rather than relying on hosting its visitors in existing hostels. I think that somebody else can take that one, but I do know that that was the idea of the initiatives thing. But Dave, I remember correctly, we did actually have a long discussion on fundraising initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to say anything about that?
I think he's going to share us.
I was just sharing the timeline for Professor Abba's question. Yeah. So that if you today, August, then in the next month or two, we should have the formation work done, and Accra will be launching, and of course, starting in Accra and beyond, we'll be doing the fundraising at a more intense level.
Yes, the end vision is for the ADFI to be self-sustaining.
Yes.
Yes, and it is exciting, and all ideas and feasible and viable ones welcomed. But the one lesson everybody knows that it is extremely difficult. So the starting point of having this core money, that is our own money, is useful. Another thing that African organizations are not great at, and we need to start, is the idea of endowment. The very fact that Carnegie is able to give us money now in the year 2026, and if I'm not mistaken, the gentlemen have been dead for nearly a century, is that because there's an endowment. So that, I think, is a powerful idea, however small, that we started. And what I heard in that suggestion is the idea of social enterprises and other forms of gaining income that would make it enduring, as it were. All of those would be welcome. The bit about partners and funding that are available through partners, in that those are opportunities when they exist and the ethical rules allow, then we should take it, because they exist and it builds is our strength and our own sustainability. So the strategy, as it were, is that it is multifaceted in nature. It is open rather than closed. The only closing part is matters that we would have major ethical issues with. Otherwise, we go with the partnerships. Thank you. Anything else, Dee? If not, any next questions? Yeah. Randy?
I think we have addressed all of the questions. So based on the time here, I think we'll formally close the Q&A portion. Of course, if you have other questions and comments and observations and suggestions, please send those to us at africandiaspora@iie.org. That is the CADFP inbox. And we'll be collecting those and sharing them with the council and with SBF. So please do submit those in, even if we didn't get a chance to address it here in the presentation. So now we'll kind of move towards our closing statements.
Randy, in a minute, I'll come back to you from III, any sort of major observations you have. But just before that, can I just invite Dee to just say any sort of closing observations you have? Then we'll come to Randy and then I'll close the meeting.
Our own observation is that this has been really refreshing at this process, seeing all the work that the advisory council has been doing behind the scenes. We were at the other side of it, being fellows, and of course we have our say, right? But just to see the amount of work and all the effort that the advisory council has put in over the years, and the efforts that you continue to put in, and seeing how you are engaging with the community, not trying to impose any ideas, because this workshop, for instance, were like, no, you want to, at every point in time, share what is going on with the alumni community to get the feedback, because you are not building for yourselves, but you are building for them. So it is very encouraging, at least from my discipline perspective, that is the user-centered innovation and design here. So we look forward to more of such engagements, and we hope that together, I mean, we have a lot of all of us, very, very smart people here. Once we collect our ideas together, we build something very enviable, and that other people can actually come in and copy and also have an impact. So thank you for this opportunity to learn more and to be engaged.
Thank you so much, Dee, and thanks to your group, the Sahara Business Frontiers, Cedric, and your other colleagues for the assistance and technical support you've been giving us and will continue to give to us in the coming weeks and months. Randy?
Yes.
IIE.
Yes, so I'm the program manager for the program at IIE, which has been the administrative body for the program since its inception. And for me, it's just been really amazing to witness the fantastic momentum and enthusiasm from the fellowship alumni community towards the next stage. There's been tremendous buy-in and interest for this next transitional stage of the program. And I can see that the council has a really clear vision of where to go, and that has been very much influenced by the interests and the voice of the alumni body. So watching this take place has been inspiring and interesting, and I'm looking forward to being present in Accra this November for kind of the public launch of the ADFI.
Thank you so much, Randy, and of course for the continued support IIE is giving to help this transition from IIE. Of course, you manage so many programs over the years and have been running this, but you've been fully supportive and facilitative in helping us make this move from it being a program to a permanent institution. Now, the year 2004, Kofi Annan was still Secretary General, and he did something very interesting. He convened what was called the Global Commission on International Migration. That is really what has triggered in global policy the formulation of diaspora development at a global level. And I remember when they reported in 2006, the feedback that one of the pioneering diaspora organizations in the UK made, Afford, was that the diaspora element was not strong enough. And Secretary General Kofi Annan was gracious enough to ask the 6 commissioners to agree to come to London at the invitation of AFFORD, a diaspora organization, to do a special diaspora discussion of the report. And from then on, you would notice in global policy that you begin to see the nexus when it says migration and it says development. Before that date, it would say international migration, full stop. And then since then, you then say migration and development. And of course, immediately after in 2007, you have the Global Forum on Migration and Development. And Professor Paul Zelezi and others were involved in this discussion, all thinking of practical means of changing these ideas of leveraging diaspora resources into practical solutions. But this pocket of specialist diaspora volunteering, the scholars have been so powerful. But what we've all together managed to get with the gracious and generous support of Carnegie, I think has been historic. And that is why I think it bodes well that the transition would be successful, where in many other cases it has not been successful, because policy has backed it, thinking have backed it. Look at the experience we've had in this discussion. Alumni who've not been to some of the discussions we've been discussing, they're coming up with ideas, talking about things as if they were in the room. Yeah. So it's not, yes, it's a beautiful thing to behold, because what it means is that there's a consensus of what we understand we need to do. We will never agree on everything, and that's not even the intention. Who would want to live in the world where we agree on everything? Progress will not happen. But the 80% of the core things we seem to be in sync with, and that is a great thing. And I'm pleased and grateful for this meeting. So the next stage is we take the invitation and the doors are open in terms of ideas and solutions. The main guidance I would suggest personally, having had the good fortune and the misfortune of being involved in diaspora organizations that have been successful and that have failed as well, is the sort of guidance we've used at AFFORD for many years. That is, let us not be peddlers of problems and doom. Let us be merchants of solutions and hope. So the problems and the doom is all true, we agree. So all of us who think about it, especially us scholars and professionals, I am arguing that there's a moral duty on us to flip it immediately and then say, what is or what are the possible solutions? We may not have the answer, but we would start the thinking for that. And we've witnessed it here. And the funding part is an important part. So we are also pleased that that was well received, and some people are even perhaps more ambitious than we think. So this 750 by 750, imagine if we are that successful that we don't raise $500,000, we end up raising 750, $750,000. Then we go back to Carnegie, who's accompanying us, to many other partners, and say, thank you for bringing us up to here. This is our capital in cash. Our capital in kind, nobody questions. It's huge. It's bigger than this sum. This is our capital in hard cash. And here's the future we want to go. Help us in that journey. So thanks again, all of you who've joined us. We look forward to seeing some of you in person in Accra, and the discussion and the engagement continues. And I think it is time to adjourn till we see you all next time. Thanks, III. Thanks, alumni. Thanks, D and Co. And thanks, Advisory Council. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Goodbye.